failed umpteen times and then eventually got it fine-tuned so they no longer have to think about it.
I was in the national news the next day and a couple of headlines going, Mick gets more than an eyeful, from Garvin's, Mickey Mouse boxer shorts.
There is no blueprint out there that's going to work in every scenario, every situation. And I think that's what we need to start to get young people to think about.
In the room, 52 Jokers Wild.
All right, it's another Friday, and here we are in the room with George and Garvin, and our special guest today is Wayne Denner, who is an online safety guru, I believe, and cybersecurity. He also got called away recently because of some issues that were happening locally. And we'll probably never get to talk about any of that because that's not what the show's all about.
That's work.
We talk about UFOs and strange things happening and parallel universes and Schrodinger's cat. And I got that name wrong, but that doesn't matter because we keep all those little fluffs in. Last week I got a punch from Billy Schur because I got his name wrong. I couldn't get the Sweps thing going, but hopefully I got his name spelt right there. So that's all right. And at least I've got your name right, Wayne, this point, because for some reason, because the dyslexia keeps kicking in, and I'd seen Wayne and Denner, and I put the D in front of the Wayne, and I had Dwayne, and I went, no, it's not Dwayne, but I got it right, so it should be okay. So how are you doing? How are you keeping?
I'm doing fantastic. Actually, great to join you guys on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks very much.
Now, I'm going to jump in because my mind is already going, because George gave me a trigger, and he said Dwayne. That's Dwayne Johnson. I'm reminded of him. Forget the Dwayne, go back to Wayne. I was thinking John Wayne, get off your horse and drink your milk.
That's
now I'm going, your parents must have had something in mind with the Wayne. So was it good old John?
Apparently it was good old John. You're absolutely right.
Well, there you go. Get off your horse and drink your milk. There's a man in the field. What was the one in Ireland he done? There was a good old film.
The Quiet Man.
I'm no John Wayne. I'm no quiet man. George
Definitely
wishes
not.
I was. Maybe you are.
You have to be a good listener here to see how things go. But we're actually now on to episode 81 of our show. We've been ploughing on since June of last year, and here we are now into another June. But we've been keeping pretty positive with our kind of discussions and what we've been getting up to. And in the last few weeks, we've decided, you know what, it's no good just talking to ourselves. We need to open the loop out and start reaching out to the world outside and see how they're doing. So that's the reason why we've got you on the show today. So how have you been keeping over this last year?
I have been, well, in the current scheme of things, I have been fantastic. And believe it or not, I have been following the madness on LinkedIn.
We found our customer.
There's our customer. That's the one that we were celebrating last week.
We actually done all the maths and all the data mining, and we're working out this. We have 70 shows, we have 70 views. Is it 7 people? Is it watching 10? Is it 10 watching 7? No, it's Wayne Denner watching them all back to back. We found that one person, the only customer in the room that matters. Thanks, Wayne. It's for
I don't
you.
need to binge watch on Netflix. I can binge watch on Jokers Wild.
That's it. 52 Jokers Wild. That's it. Well, and the name came because of the card games that we'd all been playing along as well. We suddenly went, you know what? Why not be the Joker? Why not be the Joker and actually set our own, boundaries not limitations, open the boundaries up and see where we can fly. And one of the biggest problems that we had initially was the kind of fear of actually doing this kind of thing. And now we've got so used to it. It's kind of, should we do a show? Or we should have recorded that one. That would have been really, really good. And
one of the things that I really like about it, George, is you never know what's going to happen. And whenever I tune in, you pick up some stuff and you just never know what way it's going to go. And from a viewer's point of view, listener's point of view, that's intriguing. That's interesting.
Yeah.
How do you think we feel? George is saying day one, he's from the film industry. He's going, yes,
we need to
we'll
write a script.
This, we'll script that. I'm going, George, I have a memory span of a goldfish. I have no short-term memory capability. I couldn't learn a poem for the Leaving Cert 30-something years ago. There's no hope of me following a script or lines. We've got to go improv. You can cut, you can paste, you can edit me out, you can stick me in afterwards. But if you start saying follow the rules, and if you start saying, my brain shuts down on the basis of, I remember doing it's logical maths. My son is the exact same. It's like, if I don't remember A, B, C in that order, I will get stuck on B and never get to D. Whereas other people go, write in Z, write in Y, put in X, put them, doesn't matter, just get them out. And go, no, I'm stuck in a logical row or an order. And therefore, that's why I was who I was for 30 years. I got stuck in the rut of a silo of being an accountant. I knew what I was. You turned up, you got paid, you did a job. But at the end of the day, you went, how the hell did you get out of this? Because I know the order now, but I've no alternate order. There's no star point, no white. You can't hand me a white sheet. And actually, my daughter was saying the same thing. I've got a mini-me. She went off and got advice as to what can you be, when you grow up. And we got and paid for consultancy advice. It's like a mini Myers-Briggs. And she did the test, and the guy said, God, you're great. Your left-hand side of your brain is doing some nice hoops and sort of whirls, and your right side is doing the same. You can be anything you want, which put her back and me back to nothing. We can be nothing. I don't know what it is, didn't know now, I just paid you some money and I know less. So we can be everything and nothing. So actually, there you go. I'm back to you. Otherwise, George is sick to death of this. But thank you for being our customer.
I suppose the irony there is, Garvin, that, when it comes to business, there's really no right or wrong way, and that's the beauty of what you guys are doing, what I'm doing as well. There is no blueprint out there that's going to work in every scenario, every situation. And I think that's what we need to start to get young people to think about. You don't necessarily need to go down that traditional route anymore. If there's something out there that you really want to do, then let's make it happen. There will be a pathway into that. You just need to find what the pathway is. So I think, what you're saying there is absolutely on point. There is no right or wrong.
And I think most kids are being...
for a second. I have a saying, George. Sorry, go. I forget. We've got wrong, so right is ridiculous. We're the masters of wrong. We don't know how to market. We don't know what branding is. We can't figure out the algorithms. We might be doing something that might be interesting, and you found us because you knew, a friend of a friend twice removed. George pointed you to it. The rest of the planet haven't a clue, can't find us, don't know what it is, don't know how to deal with us, because they're frightened of what we could be. And that's the thing. If someone is not your audience, like my wife, they won't give you the time. You have that elevator pitch amount of time and you don't even have that if you're not searching or looking. And that's what we found. We're doing it in the isolation of the audience. We're hoping we'll get better, and by the time we get there might be someone. If we package it, there's a possibility, but we're not. We have to keep on remembering we're not the experts. No. A 10-year-old, an 18-year-old is the expert.
Yeah, no, I think. See, there's an illusion there. I think a lot of people keep thinking that they have to be the experts, and a lot of people that we've been talking to recently, including Billy Sure, he was kind of going, "Oh, do I need to go off to college and go and do a whole load of courses and things?" And I said, "No." And I listened to what he was talking about, and I went, "Well, you've already getting the customers coming in, so you've got no problem there. You've gone off and done some form of training, so you've got no problem there. So what are you worried about? Why don't you just keep on doing what you're doing?" And he said, "Oh, I've got to just go out and meet more and more people." I know, because I've suffered it as well, is that often you kind of feel that you're not the expert. You need to do more learning. You need to do this to get things to work. And quite often the best way is to just keep practice. And then you become the expert. I mean, I was listening to myself on the other show, because one of the things that we've actually noticed is that we have this conversation like we're doing now. We've got you on your computer, me, Garvin on his, me on mine. We're not experiencing the show. We're having a different experience of this show. I then edit all the streams together, and that's a different experience again. When I suddenly see it on YouTube, that's the first time I've actually seen the program as a program, and I'm seeing it totally different. So the guy that looks like me could be somebody else. It could be Joe Bloggs down the road. And I was listening to myself sitting there kind of going, he's talking as though he's a counsellor. He's only done a course this last year, but look at what he's talking about. You'd think he was the expert. And I know, because it's me, I'm not. I've just done lots of reading, and I've gone out and practiced certain things, but I'm bringing all these life experiences in. And that's really what the expert is. It's someone that's got a wealth of life experiences, not a wealth of qualifications, but a wealth of life experiences, has tried things out, put them into practice, more than likely failed umpteen times, and then eventually got it fine-tuned so they work out where it is they need to be doing, so they no longer have to think about it. And I think what a lot of these guys are doing now is they're starting to think through the process too much. And it's like, I think Garvin and I have talked about this before. If you start thinking about walking, like Garvin did one point when he was on a catwalk, he couldn't walk because he was overthinking it. A lot of the times we're having to tell people, stop overthinking, just do and see what happens, and then moderate it and change it the next time round.
You triggered me a second. I'm going to give you the little story behind that statement. And it's I only have about 9 stories in my life I can tell. This is one of them. And, again, it's the same year the Marathon Bar ad. I came back, I was a model, an international model. Just basically I had a haircut. I went away with a foot and a half of hair, came back with a haircut. And because I was picked up by a modelling agency in London, now again, they picked me up. I was 6'6". Models are 6'4". I was picked up because of a couple of tall girls in the book that they wanted to make look normal. Nothing fitted me. I had Armani suits from Savile's Row, and I looked like Pee Wee Herman. It was like this. Nothing fitted. So I didn't look great in the catwalk, but you're not meant to be looking at me. You're meant to be looking at the girl in the bikini, sort of strutting her stuff, walking up and down. And I was just there to normalise the fact that she's a gangly 6'3". But that aside, I only got one gig. I got back to Ireland, and it was for people in need. And I remember this back, and I don't even know what year it was. It was for Brown Thomas. There was a fashion show, and Jerry Hall was launching her swimwear collection. And I just somehow got roped into being the only man in the room. Again, I'm not complaining. 12, fabulous-looking models modelling Jerry Hall's bikini wear, and I'm the only man in the room. I'm going, I'm paying you. You don't even have to pay me. I'm just there. I was really... No, they didn't realise. No one actually knew who I was. I came back from London with my little portfolio that was given to me for free. They assumed I knew what I was doing. They assumed I was one of them. I wasn't. Walk, they said. Walk up and down the catwalk there. And then, as I said, my body and my mind for the first time realised it had legs. It didn't know what to do with them. It didn't know what left looked like, what right looked like, and how they were meant to function. Now, I wasn't given time to train. This was walk. They dressed me up and they said, opened the curtain and shook me out and said, walk up and down there. What was at the other end of the catwalk was a TV crew, a room full of I don't know who, whats and wheres. You can see them, they're all in the dark, but because the lights were shining this way on the catwalk, I was being blinded. I didn't realise that these lights were like 200 degrees and you were sweating like a pig. The girls had no clothes on or near nothing, so I was in an Armani suit. And I was no shoes or socks because they couldn't get a pair to fit me, so I was looking well cool before my time. I start to walk. The girls were doing little dances and little jigs. I walked straight through them. They were bouncing off of me, and they were fixing themselves. That was fine. They made it look as if it was part of the show. I got to the end of the catwalk, and I looked down, and all I could see was two faces, because the lights were shining on them. And who it was Jerry Hall and Mick Jagger. And Jerry was hitting Mick and laughing her head, and Mick was laughing, and she was laughing. And I didn't know what they were laughing at. I looked down too, and Jesus, my fly was open. So I done a quick little U-turn, and I went 90 miles an hour, walking. I'd mastered walking, and a little bit of jogging and running, straight back up, back into the dressing room. I don't think I did anything they wanted me to do. I made an impression. I was in the national news the next day, and a couple of headlines going, so what will Mick think? Mick gets more than an eyeful, from Garvin's, Mickey Mouse boxer shorts. But I mean, they didn't dress me, they didn't train me, they sent me out there, they didn't know what I was beforehand, they had great expectations, I had no expectations, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm on national TV and in the newspapers next day. It was great PR. That was my one and only bit of bottling, I tell you. But as I said, it throw you in the deep end. That's where I was thrown. And I have really, really enjoyed it, and it's in there to this day. And I'm sure Mick Jagger and the wife at the time, it's scarred into their memories as well. So that was my learning how to walk after about 30 years after the fact.
So Wayne, you've been on quite a journey as well with what you've been doing. And
Wayne's here. Forgot about Wayne.
Yeah, you forgot about Wayne.
Bring him back in.
Still here.
Bring Wayne back in. I'm still here as well, Garvin. So you almost forgot about me, but not quite. No, I mean, one of the things that we're finding is that quite often when I used to speak to my dad and other people, you're kind of going, well, they're old folk and they don't really know. But quite often I used to get into these conversations, I kind of go, listen, Dad, is it because I'm my age and you're your age, there's a difference. And we came up with a kind of idea that, no, it was just the time that we were living in. We were both experiencing things exactly the same way. And I know with my son, we're having conversations, and he's having his kids growing up now and got 2 youngsters, which is really good. And we're getting into that same kind of conversation. I mean, one of the things was my son used to say, Dad, you used to have a scary face. It used to scare me silly when you had that scary face. And the other day he rang up and says, Dad, I've got the scary face. It's your scary face, because my little boy went, ah, exactly the same as I did. And my wife says, no, that's your scary face. I went, oh, my goodness. So how's your experience of the world at the moment? How's that impacting you?
Yeah, well, I suppose like everybody, like you guys, like all businesses, like everyone really, I've had to learn to adapt. I think, adaptation has been something that we've all had to do. It doesn't matter whether you're a primary school student. I have two boys myself. One's a primary school student, one's a secondary school student, and both of their lives, for the most part, have been kind of turned upside down compared to my life when I was their age. Things were pretty normal. You go to school, you come home. Suddenly they found themselves having to adapt to technology, to new ways of learning, to a world that says you can't do this and you can't do that. You can't go out on your bike. You have to socially distance. You need to wear a mask, all of this type of stuff. So, this COVID-19 period for me has been similar to everyone else. It's been a period of trying to adapt. And really, from my point of view as a parent, as a dad, as a business owner, you really don't know what's coming next, because things are changing all the time. So I think we can only do our best. I think having continuous conversations with children is really important, reassuring them that hopefully at some point we'll get back to some sort of normality. But what I have said to my boys, and I think which is interesting in this conversation, is this is actually a good skill to develop. And I use the skill adaptation as a skill. If you can adapt, if you can overcome adversity, if you can build resilience in yourself to be able to adapt whatever's thrown at you, then that's going to be something that as you move through your life is going to be very advantageous to have. And I think we all know this, that many people don't have resilient skills, don't have the ability to adapt. People have found themselves in jobs working 9 to 5 for 20, 30, 40 years. Suddenly something happens and they're laid off and they don't know what to do. Where me, you, us 3 guys here sitting having this conversation today, we're comfortable with the adaptation. We're flying our own kite. We always have. I always have flown my own kite. I know you guys are probably similar in that respect. And I'm trying to teach my 2 boys, you know what, it's okay to fly your own kite, and it's okay to try multiple things and multiple experiences.
And then I'm reminded here that I'm picturing your kids going, Dad, would you feck off with that kite shite? And I have a drone. And if you're going to start flying bits of paper and stick there now, you go over there now. I have a 3-dimensional real-time drone here. I'm going to plug in my app. I'm going to fly it over there. I'm going to pick up a piece. Like, what do you want anchovies on that? I'll have it back. I've got my Revolution. We're the old farts, I'm afraid. They're not adapting. They're laying. They're powering ahead. We didn't even. I found some photographs there last night of my mother put a little album together as when I was a kid, and it was like me as a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 13-year-old. And I was going. The one thing I noticed in all the photographs was I was playing with the same tricycle. I talked to my daughter, going, "There's my toys." My grown-up toys and my baby toys, where there was a bucket in the back garden, there's a bicycle. It's that till it rusts. It's yours. Make do. That was what it was then. It's not a 3-dimensional drone and PS5 and Gods of War. It's based so our playtime is a different playtime. The planet. Kids are going, I'm off to New York, I'm going to do this. I'm playing with Jim in Sweden and George in Germany. The world is a smaller place. Actually, I'm sure they're playing with someone on a different planet as well. It's like their mindset is already out there. I don't think the kids were still trying to adapt. They're malleable, they're pliable. They're that neuroplasty and the LLP is, they're rewiring their brains every 5 minutes of the day and doing it again. Excuse me. So I don't have any fear for my kids. In that sense, I believe the only thing with the problem was the bit of the stop. They want to be doing it with the touch version of it and that touchy feely part of a relationship rather than doing it from the room and the tech. But they'll get back into the swing. Things will fix. There will be a new norm. Whatever it looks like, it doesn't matter. It's us that's trying. I think we know the past. We know what we had, and therefore we feel bad for them. But actually, I can't get my son out of the bedroom. He's just like he's sitting at holidays there today. And he's going 3 months. Brilliant. What are you going to do? Nothing. I said, what's the thing you're going to do? The thing I'm going to do is nothing. I fucking love it. The daughter, she wants to get out and do stuff. There's different mindsets, and they're happy. One is happy doing nothing. The other wants to conquer the planet. I think I have no fear for the kids.
I think what's interesting is that I know that my 2 lads have grown up playing games and they were doing the same kind of things that you were describing about your youngsters, and there's a big age gap difference between them. But what I've also found is that during the COVID period, my eldest son decided that he got a motorbike. He learned how to ride a motorbike against his mum's wishes, but he's learned to ride a motorbike. And in Canada, he had this Kawasaki 600. He's turned it into a cafe racer, but he's redesigned the whole bike. He's an engineer, so he's an electrical engineer. So he's rewired the whole thing, stripped it all out and made it into something new. But he designed it. Garvin was saying we need to be sort of ad-libbing quite a lot, but he's gone in and designed this whole motorcycle. And I remember as a kid that we used to do Airfix models and balsa wood models. Those were the kind of things that we build. And we had the plans mapped out of what we were doing. And what's interesting is that the youngsters, I'm seeing some youngsters start to go back to that way of doing things because they are more tactile. They're getting away from the computers. And one of the great things that I've seen recently is that my youngest son, who's married now, who again was stuck in front of the computer, wouldn't go out, was doing 3D printing, a whole load of stuff. Now that his wife has finished one of the courses that she's doing, they've gone kayaking, which is fantastic. They've gone out and they're getting into the world to experience the world in a different way, away from that safety of this kind of little cube that we're mainly all sort of stuck in. And I think that's an exciting thing to be doing. I'm myself, having done things in a very sort of practical way, very kind of physical way, liked doing stuff that was practical, hated theory. I've ended up spending the rest of my life getting involved in theory, being stuck studying. I'm now getting a chance to get out there again to experience the garden. We've been watching the birds fly around the garden. I've got a fence to put up, but I've already started in my head planning out all this methodology I'm going to use to install this fence at the front garden, and it will work because I've these ideas are popping into my head. The very functional process of doing this job. We've got one of those little corkscrew things to dig out the hole. We've got the cement. We're going to put it up, and I've pictured the whole thing. It's already there. It exists. It's there in my head.
I heard one word, George.
Go on.
You said experience the garden.
Experience the garden.
What I heard was experience the garden. I was going, I've changed your world. I've rocked your world. I've frightened the bejesus out of you. You're not used to this. If you can experience the Garvin and
Garvin, not garden. I thought...
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole point. Your garden is
the Garvin, not the garden.
You're going into safety, functional, plant a rose.
Every time I use words.
The garden you want to be in is experiencing the Garvin, the Garvinology, the Garvin wreck your head, the grating voice. He loves his own voice. He's I'm not in a conversation.
Every time I get words to translate what Garvin's talking about, and I mention the word Garvin, it always types garden.
That's it. But actually, there is another thing. My first job as that lounge boy come barman when I was 13 years of age. He had it's not a speech. He's from the country, the chap in question, and he used to call me Garden, and I go, no, Garvin, no, Garden. So I had to put up because he is the owner. So I have been a garden in the past. The Garvin, if you use it not as my name, but more the fact the Garvin effect. I wreck people's heads. I shout at them. I'm too fast. They're not able. They run away in fear. I don't make friends and influence people very easy. But when you get the Garvin effect and you get through that shite, and you get to the other side, you'll survive anyone else. Anyone else is a doddle. You go improv and from Donald Trump to Mother Teresa, and you'd be going, I've gone through a Garvin. I can handle you lot. So that's it. The Garvin effect is if you can get me to let you in. And listen.
Well, I've built up my confidence
2 years
because I've had the Garvin effect plowed into me, and I fought my way back, and I've managed to challenge him as well, which I think is really good. But I'm getting to see the real Garvin, or the real garden that's there. Now that reminds me of something that I remember a couple of years back. We were chatting. Dwayne. There's the D
Dwayne,
word.
Wayne, you have it now.
Right.
Mr. Johnson's in the room.
Mr. Johnson's in the room.
Mr. Motivator.
So I knew that was going to trip me up
muscles.
somewhere. But I remember there was a little story that you were telling us about an experience of the garden that you were having relating to the birds that are outside and how that developed. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I don't want to unnecessarily plug one of my ventures because Garvin might come down on me pretty hard.
Don't you dare. keep it high level.
But there was an experience there.
There was an experience, yeah, and it's really, it all stemmed from COVID-19 and finding a way that I could spend some time in the garden, but how could we encourage some more activity in the garden, such as the birds? And the bird seed idea sort of came as a result of that, where we've concocted this seed recipe that we now sell, and that's the only plug I'm going to give. And what it does is it effectively tracks in a whole host of different birds and different bird species into the garden and makes it a happy place. And that was really the idea behind it. I wanted to figure out a way that I could create something where people could spend more time in their garden, getting inspired.
Getting through to you now. That's it.
And this was one way to do it for the bird lovers. So yeah, that's how that idea came about. And you know what? It's been going really well. And again, I found myself, just like you shared a couple of moments ago, immersing myself more in nature. I sold my caravan last August and I bought a camper van. Oh, wow. And now I've got plans this year to get out into the open road and experience lots of places around Ireland. And hopefully I'm going to go up into Scotland, into the Outer Hebrides, and spend a little time up there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I jump back in here because I'm hearing... I know you think you're saying stuff. I know you think you're talking about gardens and birds and seeds. That's not what I'm hearing.
It's that neuroplasticity that's going on there with Garvin. We have to rewire his brain a little bit more.
There's no language in anyone I know that if we were using that, we're talking about the birds and the bees. Yeah, we're on the birds and the bees. And we're not about the birds and the bees, we're about the birds. And the blokes that I know when we're talking about the birds, and I'm not being sexist, but I'm just going back to my youth. And it was all about the birds. And yes, we'd be planting seeds and how we can attract those birds into the garden and that type of language. And it was, again, strategic planning. That's what it was. You went to the disco, you done a little dance. It was we were all doing that little bird dance. I was Big Bird. I was 6'6" in my yellow suit and my feathers, and I was doing that little shaking the tail to attract the other type of birds on the dance floor. And that's the type of birds I like. The birds and the seeds. Okay, plant
you do that.
Seeds like that. But you're not impressing me. I'm never going to be your customer.
I don't know, because I know in our garden, you see
have him. He's
you see the birds with the fancy feathers trying to get on with the chicks out there.
I want to see a big
certainly
bird dance
chase them down the roof. I can tell you about
that. Well, it's all gone Tinder now and Bumble, so that's the way you.
Well, Bumble is the bee. Now Tinder, I don't know how that comes in, but I mean. I have friends, and that's the weird thing. Some of them are divorced, and some are, and they use this language of Tinder, swiping left and right and all over the place. And they show me some of the pictures that come back and go, these women are suffering from dyslexia. That's not 46, that's 64. I don't know what. I don't even know who took that picture, but they shouldn't let that out the door. I don't know what that's going to attract in. You're going. It's frightening, some of it. And again, I'm sure there's clickbait this and something else that. But thank God I'm not out there. I mean, it was bad enough doing my little dance across the dance floor at 18 years of age to attract that other sex and get that little last chance dance. And would you dance me? No. Well, how about your friend? I mean, then you'd be scarred for about 3 months afterwards. You have to change nightclubs because you've done the rounds. I mean, Tinder, they haven't a bloody clue. You had to have your strategies, you had to have your strut, you had to do your dance. And by God, the competition was fierce in the ballroom of romance. And that's what the game I had to play.
Well, that ballroom actually does exist in our garden because, you see the finches, the sparrows.
They're for the birds, George.
Yeah. They're doing the same game that you were playing there, Garvin. Definitely. And some of them, I'll tell you
they had more success than I did, I'll tell you.
No, they didn't. Some of their missuses really sort of virtually knocked them off the roof. You see them tumbling down the roof, coming down. There's some there. The banter out there.
Wayne, I'm going to bring this down. Obviously, you're married with children. You're Al Bundy, married with children. Did you do a little dance? How did you attract that other little bird?
Well, like you, Garvin, I had those experiences in nightclubs and discos and pubs and bars. And that's something that fundamentally has changed at the moment with COVID-19. I mean, many young people actually, and the research out there will indicate that they're missing that opportunity to go and court or meet another female, a male, whatever their way they are inclined. Because there's no venues to go to now, there's no nightclubs, there's no, the pubs can't even play music. So that's going to be interesting to see, the impact that has had. One thing it has done is it has obviously boosted things like Tinder, Bumble, those platforms now where people are going online to meet others in that sort of virtual social setting. So it's going to be interesting to see the impact that has, I think, in future. Years to come, the impact it may have on overall relationships. Things happen a lot quicker in the online and the virtual space, as we all know. So I think we're going to look back on this time as a very interesting experiment overall. The impact it's having on the workplace, the impact on the future of work, the impact on relationships, mental health, well-being, all of these things. And I think we're living through a very interesting time. And it's nice that the three of us here can observe this from afar, so to speak, because we don't have that traditional mode of work.
Yeah, my wife won't let me download Tinder. You're right. I'll have to just look from afar. Yeah.
We can
now,
observe.
Actually, I have to worry if she actually hands me the phone with Tinder downloaded. I better check the prenup because there's something else. Look at this.
Well, one of the difficulties I think a lot of youngsters are having is that they can talk on screen. Because they're in their silo. Garvin's talked about the silos quite a bit. They're in that protective silo. They think they can say anything because they're invulnerable. They nothing can get to them. Nothing can do anything to them. But when they actually meet face to face in 3D in the flesh, they're meeting a different person because they saw them as a flat image, and now they're seeing everything about that person. And not only that, the perspective they're now getting is of somebody totally different, and they may not even recognize them based on what they're seeing. And a whole other load of stuff kicks in that they weren't able to perceive in the 2D world. I mean, I remember not only that, there's I've been doing a counselling course, and on the counselling course, most of it was online. So we were interacting, doing what they call the triads, and doing counselling. And then you were in the classroom and you suddenly went, wow, the experience in the classroom or in person is totally different. Because now I'm not only observing their eyes and what they're saying, I'm watching their body language. I'm seeing in closer, how they're reacting to what I'm saying, or what's going on with them. That the body language is more evident. There are other things that are going on. Those are the tools that are being deprived, I think, of the youngsters at this point because they're not getting the chance to be there, like Garvin was strutting his stuff. They could see him, they could analyse him in every single way they could possibly go.
The stuff was meant to be put away. It wasn't meant to be visible. That was terrible. I'll never get away with that one.
Well, all the people that are going into meetings now, and they're sitting there looking really nice and posh here, and they're wearing their pyjamas underneath because no one gets to see it.
Now, George, I'm going to double back for a second because, no, I don't know. It's my brain. That's how it works. All I heard was triads. I could have sworn I saw a bunch of ninjas. Are triads ninjas? And if so, then that's what I start. That's where I start going. There's a bunch of ninjas going out there. They're membership of the triads, and but it's at the same time the avatar bit. We double back again. It's there's all these filters and avatars. And George, we done a show with Billy Schwer. George just showed me the preview of it last night, and he's used sepia photograph, filters. And I'm going, Jesus, I'm looking great. Now, no, George thinks I'm congratulating his part of the show and everything, and all I'm going is, I'm just looking at me going, I look great. Like he's taking a few years off me there now, and we can do with some more of this. Now, that's a flat image of you with filtered sepia, looking better, dressed up, bit of tech to mask that age and a couple of wrinkles, and back to the Bumbles and the other one. You're going, it's dressed up desktop publishing. It's filtered this and the other, full immersion something else. That's a bloke. It's not even a girl. It's frightening, two-dimensional what's there.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the news item this week from America, but there's a whole load of kids that are graduating from high school, and the high school has censored their image. So a lot of them had sort of low-cut dresses, and they redid their uniforms, and they're all absolutely livid because their privacy has been invaded, because they've actually drawn attention because the Photoshop work was so bad on all these images in their final year book, and they're whoa. So again, that's something that's quite interesting, is where we've reached a stage with the technology that you can't necessarily trust the image that's there in front of you, because there are certain types of software where they're now able to scan the face. And I could be sitting there, but I've got Obama's face on or Trump's face on, and talking with his voice. It's a bit like Mission Impossible, where they've got the little voice.
George wants to be the president of the United States.
I want to be the president of the United States.
He doesn't matter if it's white, black or orange, as long as he has a chance of being the president.
Well, this orangeness here is almost matching into what the orangeness is.
Now, strangely enough, George, we're starting to veer towards a little bit more of what Wayne does. And I don't know much about what Wayne does, and no one else does either, because we won't ask many questions and let him talk. But that aside, it's the security. There's a little bit of security you're talking about there, a little bit of desktop publishing going on, a little bit of you don't know who you're dealing with, a little bit of avatar something, and we have your information. There is security issues and dress you up and undress you and information and power. So there is a little bit of that you're about, that we tried not to veer towards it, but it seems to want to go there itself. So we're heading towards information as power. And that's maybe we'll go with that.
Yeah, and I suppose what's interesting what you guys are talking about, and again, not to go into that, I suppose the same could be said back in your days of nightclub visits, let's say.
I like you bringing it back there. Great, we're back.
You could come across somebody who is dressed a certain way, has certain makeup on, has their hair done a certain way.
That's me. Who else there?
The next day you see that person, they're completely different, and that's the thing about it. So I think most of us are aware of that. However, when it comes to the technology, it becomes much more easier to mask. And that's the word I'm going to use, because you can set up fake personas, you can set up fake accounts, you can create avatars, you can create a virtual character, so to speak. You could be somebody that you're not. And I suppose to circle back around to the point that George was talking about earlier on, like both you and I, George, lectured in a further educational college.
Yep.
And we've come in contact delivering training materials, delivering seminars, workshops, to students, and what I have found, at least for the most part, is it's sometimes very difficult to extract engagement in the physical world from a student, but they're very good at extracting or engaging in the virtual space. And I think what we've lost almost, guys, and I think you'll agree with what I'm going to say here, is we're losing the art of communication.
Yeah,
because I've never had that. I love it. You have the art of communication. You grew up with it. You developed it. George did too. No, I have the art of talking, not the art of communication. I've got to learn that art. But I mean, the art of listening. The art of conversation includes the talking and the listening bit. 4 ears, 1 mouth. I've been told that I don't know how many times.
I think the listening's more important.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but then I'd never show. Then I'd never talk. And then it's all about me. You don't get it. I recruited George. We're doing 80 shows. He said, what are we going to talk about? Don't worry. That's not a problem. We'll talk. Now, whether it's interesting, whether it's good, whether it's bad, there's not going to be a problem with sound. There's not going to be a problem.
Only if it's too loud.
Yeah, he lowered
Did you see that we never even talked about what we were going to talk about there? I didn't go down that path because we're picking up on the things that we're discussing and listening to what you guys are saying. You know, communication, I think, is so fundamental. As a parent myself, I'm very aware of that with my two boys growing up, that I need them to become as effective communicators as they can possibly be. Otherwise, opportunities are going to pass them by. And I think, yes, you still need to be able to be good at a communication or a communicator online, but equally, you need to be able to come offline and you need to be able to articulate your message and you need to be able to get your point across. But ultimately, you need to be able to listen to what's being said and then respond accordingly.
Now, Garvin had asked about what was a triad.
So what?
Hang on a second, Garvin. Garvin was talking there about what was a triad because he was thinking about the ninjas. Now, we're effectively a triad because there's three of us here. And in counselling, what you have is you have the person who is the helpee, the person being counselled, who is normally the one talking. Garvin's that person. You've also got then the counsellor, who is the person that's listening and then paraphrases back what the other person is saying. The other good thing about
translator, George.
Yeah, you have a translator. The other good thing is in the triads, the third person is observing the person that's listening. And what they're doing is they're monitoring to see whether or not they're following certain principles of, having empathy, being non-judgmental, how they're engaging with the clients, whether they're listening to their story, whether they're actually looking for blind spots, which we've talked about quite a bit, and then how they're challenging the person to step outside of what Garvin calls the silo and look back in on their own story to see if they can find their own solutions. And I think that's really something that's quite good. That kind of area is something I think we often all need is in our own personal development, is to have the spotlight put on us to look at the way that we're doing things to help us improve with our communication and our methods of using certain types of frameworks to get that communication point across. And one of the things that I found with talking to Garvin is that Garvin would be talking a lot of business talk. I'm talking about storytelling. And what we found is there's a commonality, which you would expect, but a lot of people don't think there is. And one of the biggest problems in business is that quite often people don't know how to tell their story or get their story across. So they find an expert that's good at communication. They kind of go, "You're the expert. Tell me what I want." The first thing he has to say is, "I can't, because I need to listen to your story where you think it is and then help you discover yourself what that story is so that you can choose a way forward." It's so easy. And this is something that happens in counseling, coaching, and even in lecturing. It's so easy for someone else to say, "You're responsible for me doing what I'm about to do next." But the reality is they're not. They're not taking on we've talked about this. I'm not taking on someone else's problems. The reality is they have to learn. They can't blame other people for not taking responsibility for their actions they're doing. And that's something that has to be communicated across to people, especially the youngsters. They need to learn communication skills. They need to learn to listen as well as know when to speak, but also to have courage in what they're saying, that they do have a voice and their voice is just as valid as anybody else's. But also to not prejudge the other people around them, so because they could quite often, stereotype somebody and then totally misconstrue what is being said to them. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have. But I think what Garvin and I have been doing through these conversations is actually training us into how to communicate to other people. And I know that Garvin's going through a process of reflection. He says he's forgotten half of what we've talked about in these shows, but when he goes back, he's reflecting upon what the engagements were. And we're using this kind of 80-20 rule that we're suddenly kind of going, look, there may be mistakes and things that went wrong in the last episode, but what we'll do is we'll reflect upon them and try and see if we can improve upon that in the next one. And then we can keep on moving forward as opposed to looking back on the problems that we thought we had before.
Now, I'm going to say something, only something little. George is my translator. That's what's going on. I said something, and then he translates what he thinks I should have said. Or I could have said, or maybe this is what I meant. Now, I don't know if I meant it. I just said what came out of my head. and my brain doesn't filter. That's my problem. I said it many a time. I have no filter. My wife gives out about it. She says, think before you talk. Then I won't talk because I've no filter. If I think about it, I won't say it. Therefore, I say nothing, and I'm concentrating on what I'm going to say, which is I'm trying to work out what to say, and it's 5 minutes later. So no filter. It's out there. Have I used my outside voice? So I think I've said it in my head. I've said it outside. I've said it loud, and it's not filtered. So it's just out there. And I'm going to say, well, I'm going to talk. It needs to be out there, and whoever the hell I'm talking to better not be, gentle or easily insulted or that type of thing. They have to be able for it. They're grown up, for God's sake. It's not that I'm shouting at them, cursing at them, or doing something else. I'm just externalizing. I'm just using my ideation. I'm trying to entertain a little bit, and it's for me, it's just on the outside. That's all it is. So I think I'm saying stuff, and I may be saying stuff. George translates into, well, that was actually unrealistic versus realistic expectations. That was the silo. There's a little bit of Pareto principle 80-20 rule. That's strategizing, that's planning, that's goals. And it actually is. It's even talking about the little bit of a dance. Going on lack of training for my show. I mean, they shouldn't have sent me out there. I wasn't dressed, nothing fitted. I wasn't trained. I wasn't fit for purpose. They put me on national TV. Well, they got good press out of it. But I mean, it's if you thought about the learnings afterwards, you go, that was ridiculous. But at the same time, it happened. And and no one had a little tick list of check bits. So now you're going beforehand, that wouldn't happen again. There's learnings to be had. Everything is about business, even if it's about personal or professional. You have a goal, get up. Actually, the dancing, the going to the discos. By God, we were strategic planners. We knew we had many drinks, how to sneak it into the disco, how to get in for free, go in there, how to round them up. How many dances to do, know when to cut our losses, move on next door. I like what you were talking about a little bit earlier on, Wayne, because we could get away with holy murder. There was no phones. There was no social media. You just had to move pubs and start the process again with someone else. You brought your game, you brought your A game. You used the same lines. And if it worked on this one, brilliant, because it didn't work on the last one. They knew better. They heard it before. So we had our lines. We had our game plan, we went out, and maybe if we were lucky, we scored. I heard another little thing you said, God forbid you woke up the next day and you didn't recognise the other person. The war makeup was off, the lights were on, and you wish no one was home. So that has happened many a time too. But business planning 101 for disco dancing and dating in the Irish scene in the 90s. It's all the same.
So the key word there is learning, I think, and learning from your experiences, and I think that's really important. It's important in business. It's important in all aspects of life, and we need to make mistakes in order to learn. So I don't think there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. Mistakes are made every day. I'm making mistakes in my business, my professional life, just as you make in your personal life, and that's how we learn. And I think that's how we become better at what we're doing. So there's nothing wrong with that process. Unfortunately, some people are too hard on themselves when they make mistakes and they don't get back on the horse again, or it puts them off. But as you guys know, Garvin, you must have got back on the horse many a time and tried again.
Yes, eventually. John Wayne, we were in that posse, the Magnificent Seven. We have the gear, the horses. We didn't even need the horses. We were off down there looking for the OK Corral, bit of a shootout in the pub. No, you have to get back on the horse. You got to drink your milk. You got to go out there. I said, there's nothing in here.
Brilliant. Well, look, we are actually, would you believe, reached the end of this show again.
Perfect.
There was a show.
There was a show. There was a show. There was a point to this.
We were recording this.
We were recording this. Yes, this is the
preamble.
This is
George.
an event.
This is the preamble.
This is a preamble. We've actually covered quite a lot because we actually went out into the garden at one point, and then we got mixed up with Garvin and Garden. We ended up going through quite a lot about the life journeys that we have experiencing and sharing with other people of different generations. We also started talking about how the youngsters today, because of the current crisis, which will be over, that chapter will go very quickly, the same as any other chapter, are having a different set of experiences to what we would have had when we were young, but quite often the same experiences that they are having, we as an older generation are having as well. So it is time specific. And I think that's quite important because when we're talking to different generations, different people, there's a lot of commonality that we actually have between the generations, which quite often folks in the past thought there wasn't. They thought there was this generation gap. But there are things that we have in common, which means that we can communicate. And what Wayne was talking about was the importance of communication. The art of communication, if you like, the listening process, the speaking process, and the reviewing process that we all need to go through. And we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves when we make mistakes. And in fact, as we've all learnt, a part of that learning process is that it is only through making mistakes that you can improve yourself and become better. And if you don't make mistakes, or you don't give yourself the opportunity to make mistakes, you're actually not going to learn anything. So that's this show this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come and see us again next week on a Friday. Thanks very much, Wayne. Any last words, Garvin, just before we go?
I'm just reminded again of George just said, in this show, Wayne was the prime example of how to do it right. And Garvin was the prime example of how not to do it. So the art of conversation versus the art of talking.
Well, I have to say, my final words would be, I actually learned a lot from Garvin today. So it was a learning experience for me too.
Oh, thanks very much.
Garvinised. That's it.
Been Garvinised. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.